Alexander Emelianenko was once hailed as the next big thing in MMA. He wasn't just young and insanely talented, he carried a dark, almost dangerous aura with him. Oh, and he also happened to be the younger brother of Fyodor Emelianenko, an undisputed legend who, at his peak, ran through the heavyweight division like a wrecking ball. But fast forward 20 years and here we are. Chances are many of you don't even know his name. And that's a real tragedy, because Alexander had all the tools to be great. Today though, he's just a shadow of the fighter he could have been. In this video we're diving deep into his story, a cautionary tale of how drugs, toxic influences and his own inner demons tore down a career that once seemed destined for greatness. His story begins in 1981, in the small Soviet town of Stary Oskol. Growing up with 3 siblings, Alexander lived under tough, modest conditions. Food was scarce, often his mother would cook a single meal to last the entire week. With both parents working long hours just to keep the family afloat, young Alex spent most of his time out on the streets, getting into trouble. Turf fights became a daily routine and he would only come home to grab a little bit to eat and fuel up for the next brawl. His older brother, Fyodor, was nothing like him. He was calm, disciplined and already making a name for himself in combat sambo. Watching over Alex was part of Fyodor's responsibility, so he started dragging him along to his training sessions. That way he could keep an eye on him and still get his own work done. But it didn't take long before Alexander wanted more than just to sit on the sidelines. When he stepped onto the mat, it was clear. He was a natural, big, strong, fast, way beyond his years, and with lightning reflexes that gave seasoned fighters a run for their money. Still, he clashed with coaches, pushed boundaries, and earned himself a label, difficult. But despite everything, his talent was undeniable. Years later, during his time in Pride, Fyodor would say that his younger brother was even more gifted than he was. That Alexander had the potential to go further than anyone. But there was something Fyodor hadn't accounted for. Character. While Fyodor was focused and disciplined, Alexander was wild, impulsive and easily led astray. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1990, the streets changed. Crime and poverty took over and a new breed emerged, the so-called New Russians. They rejected the old ideals of hard work and believed in taking what they wanted, by force if necessary. Of course, Alexander admired that mindset. With his friends at his side, he continued to stir up trouble, carving his own path through the chaos. When Fyodor was drafted into the military, things at home fell apart. Their parents divorced and their mother, now alone, struggled to keep their family together. Money dried up, supervision disappeared, and Alexander drifted further and further into the streets. It's said that he eventually ended up behind bars. And while inside, he allegedly joined the Voryznakonye, the notorious thieves-in-law, a ruthless brotherhood that lived by its own brutal code, far outside the rules of society. And Alexander's body is covered in tattoos which are associated with this specific group. Stars inked on his shoulders stood for defiance against authority. Spiderwebs represent the feeling of being trapped behind prison bars. A phrase tattooed on his feet, "If you look for truth, you will get kicked in the ass." A cathedral tattoo marked time spent imprisoned, and each tower represent a separate prison term, and each window a year served. And in the case of Alexander, he has 2 towers and 4 windows, which actually should mean that he had 2 prison terms and served a total of 4 years. Alexander always denied the meanings, saying the tattoos were just a hobby of him, and started covering them up to distance himself from that life. Through it all, he never left the world of combat sambo. competing with his brother in several tournaments. But Fyodor soon made the switch to MMA, chasing better paydays, and by 2003 he was already the Pride heavyweight champion. Not long after, Alexander followed him to Pride and won his first 3 fights. His savage fighting style and menacing look made him an instant fan favorite. He didn't talk much, had a cold, fearsome stare, and could knock out opponents in a heartbeat. His mafia-style tattoos only fueled his villain image. After his Pride debut, Alexander moved to St. Petersburg to train alongside Fyodor and met his future wife Olga, and soon after got a little daughter with her. His career kept surging and he won 6 of his next 8 fights, usually with a first round finish. His only losses came against legends like Mirko Cro Cop and Josh Barnett. By the time Pride collapsed in 2007, Alexander was seen as one of the hottest rising stars in MMA. At just 26 years old, he was young, exciting, marketable. It looked like the future was his for the taking. But sadly, that would be the peak of his career. From there, everything started to fall apart. He was set to make his US debut under the Affliction banner, fighting on the same card as Fyodor vs Tim Sylvia. But right before the event, he was pulled out after testing positive for hepatitis B. The Athletic Commission wouldn't clear him to compete. After that, he fought a few more times for Russian promotions like M1 Global and smaller shows before abruptly announcing his retirement in 2012, citing chronic illness and a desire to spend more time with his family. But that wasn't the whole truth. Behind the scenes, things were getting much darker. Following the hepatitis scandal, Alexander's marriage fell apart, and it soon became obvious that he was battling severe alcoholism. In 2012, he made headlines after lighting a cigar mid-flight and trying to fight passengers who asked him to put it out. Then videos leaked showing the full extent of his addiction. Later that same year, he was arrested for assaulting a 60-year-old man in a restaurant, apparently because the music was too loud for drunk Alex. But 2013 was the real rock bottom. He was convicted of sexually assaulting his housekeeper. She claimed he had drugged her, confiscated her passport, and threatened her. The court deemed him a danger to society and sentenced him to 4.5 years in a labor camp. But after just 18 months, he got released. And soon after signed with the MMA promotion owned by the Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov, a decision that would permanently destroy his relationship with Fyodor, because he publicly spoke out against the promotion of Kadyrov, who was letting kids fight in MMA, and Fyodor just didn't like the idea. And shortly after that statement, Fyodor's daughter was hospitalized after being attacked on her way home. Of course, many believed it was retaliation from Kadyrov. So when Fyodor found out that Alexander had partnered with Kadyrov, he was heartbroken and said in an interview, "From that moment on, my brother was dead to me." In 2017, Alexander tried to turn things around. He spent time living in a monastery, waking up early, baking bread, praying, and claimed he had finally beaten his addiction. He rebuilt his body, gained muscle, and even made a comeback to MMA, winning 5 fights in a row. But the good times didn't last long. In 2019, he crashed his gold Mercedes into 2 other cars and then verbally assaulted the responding officer. All caught on a body cam, which reminds me a little bit of John Jones. Then he drifted into bizarre influencer boxing matches, fighting random bodybuilders and strongmen, but when he returned to real MMA, it was obvious that he wasn't the same fighter anymore. He looked slow, sluggish, and started losing to fighters he once would have crushed. His life was unraveling, the family was gone, the fighting career was over, and the drinking was back worse than ever, while the scandals kept piling up. Today, Alexander Emelianenko is a shadow of what he once was. He takes random influencer fights, looks almost unrecognizable, and is seemingly still trapped in his addiction. His story is a brutal reminder of how quickly life can unravel, how a few bad choices mixed with addiction can destroy even the brightest future. It also shows the true destructive power of alcohol. And in Alexander's case, it peeled everything and exposed something terrifying underneath. Personally, I find it heartbreaking. With Fyodor by his side, he could have been one of the greats. But in his life, he got multiple chances to save himself, but blew every single one of them. So I guess he can only blame himself. Okay guys, this should be it for the video. If you enjoyed the story, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to support the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.